You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
The Kansas Jayhawks fall 43-28 in Lubbock, Texas to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. This is presented by Emprise Bank. This is Booth Review. When was the last time you went into a bank? Emprise has wearable banking that allows you to check your account balance, find ATM locations, and receive alerts all from your smartwatch just as easily as you can check your steps. Don't be tethered to a brick building when the ability to bank is tethered to your wrist. Emprise Bank member FDIC. I'm not joined by Scott Chasen. I am joined by our friend, both of me and Scott's mutual friend, barbecue savant, some would say barbecue influencer, Kevin Flaherty with 24/7. Kevin, hey buddy.
How you doing, man? How you doing?
It was that was a bummer. That was a bummer of a game. We got plenty to cut into that. Man, we DM'd throughout the entire game. It's like, I know we have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's kind of fun too, because I may toss a friend of the show, Scott Chasen, reference into this thing with Scott not being here, once or twice in this thing. So
I hope we can, because he was part of the group chats that we were in as well. So there's that too. But KU falls 43-28. I think if you ask me, and I'll start. I think if you ask me, it's just the comedy of errors across every phase of the game is really what kind of led to the Chiefs falling in this game, or the Jayhawks falling into this game. I do this all the time. I cover the Chiefs. Yeah. I'm making errors too. Nobody's perfect, but it just feels like all three phases had their issues at different points in the game. And it was just all kinds of little things that we're just not used to seeing a Lance Leipold coach team do.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. Hitting the nail on the head. And the halftime interview, which we didn't see, but they referenced on the broadcast, Lance Leipold had said to him, "Hey, I'm not worried. We just need to clean things up. And if we clean things up, we're right in this thing. The problem is, Kent, the things didn't really get cleaned up." And you look at the penalties, some of the turnovers and key moments, the defense did really well at times, and yet, maybe didn't get off the field at times when they really needed to get off the field. And so, like you said, it's something where you can kind of point to all different phases and find different things to nitpick all over the place. But I think sort of the overarching theme was you needed to be a little cleaner to win tonight, and they weren't.
You want to know something though? I actually agree with Lance Leipold. If they clean things up, they do win that game. Yeah. I don't know which little thing to start on, and I don't want to spend too much time on every single little thing, but we can start with the defense. We'll start with the defense. Like, the defense really started off on the wrong foot. They gave up 3 touchdowns. Let's see here. They gave up 3 touchdowns and a field goal in the first 4 possessions to Texas Tech. Like, those were the first 4 possessions for Tech. The thing is, it's like, I think they might have been able to slow some things down there a few times with just simple rush discipline with their rushing lanes. We can just a simple thing there, and even in those early downs, because I do want to give credit to the defense for finishing the game strong, because I think they actually kind of did finish decently strong, and did enough for a lot of that football game. But the start was brutal, and just simple rush lanes with Tyler Schaub was it Shuck? Shuck.
Shuck, yeah, like to shuck corn. It
Ah,
doesn't look like
shucks.
it would be pronounced that way, but it is.
Yeah, I was thinking like the show me state. But yeah, like I think even just like they were extending some drives at times because they were out of their rush lanes and like they had them third and long. They had a lot of
Yep.
third. They put Texas Tech in a lot of third longs or third and manageables, and just like little things like not being able to tackle the quarterback or stay disciplined in your rush lanes and letting him run free to extend drives. Just even little things like that seem to be biting them early.
Yeah, you look at, there was one drive in particular, they've got him, I think at 3rd and 10, exactly where they want him. I think they give up like a 9.5 yard run to Shuck. And then they, with Texas Tech, the thing is, and you knew this going in, if it's 4th and manageable, they're going to go for it. And so it wasn't just important to get a stop on 3rd down. It was important to be productive on 3rd down. Giving up 8 yards on 3rd and 10 wasn't productive because then you're setting yourself up for a 4th and 2 where you have to get a stop where it's a lot more manageable situation. I think, that was part of it. The rush lanes were a huge issue. Lining up in the neutral zone multiple times.
Mhm.
I mean, when you're a down lineman and you can look over to the side and see where the football is, it's that hurt, little penalties here and there. It was just one of those things where, like you said, just as well as the defense played for a lot of the game, I think there are a lot of teaching points, as coaches like to describe them, on the tape where you're going to go in and say, well, gosh, if you just clean this thing up, maybe even with the offense not having its best game, you still win that contest.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll get to the offense in a minute for sure, because there's plenty to. I think there might be more to discuss there. I'm not overly disappointed in the defense. I don't think 43 points were entirely on them. I think that there's definitely some things that need to be cleaned up on that side of the ball for sure. They got some stuff to fix there. Don't get me wrong, but the thing that just the prevailing feeling for me wasn't necessarily just the overall defensive performance. And I think there's plenty of stuff that they've got to fix there too. But I did want to start with that because that's how the game started. The Jayhawks got behind the 6. See, I did it again. We're all not perfect in
one of those nights, Kent. One of those nights.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're watching, by the way. Helps us grow the channel. More Jayhawk fans can find it. See, more Jayhawk fans. I got it right that time. But that's why I wanted to talk about the front, like the performance up front for the KU offense was brutal, or for the KU defense was brutal. But the offense didn't kind of hold their own either. And I try very hard to be fair to college kids, and I'm going to continue to be fair to college kids. I don't really feel compelled to just go out and completely, just dunk on a bunch of kids very consistently. And I am not going to dunk on Jason Bean here. But I do think it's fair to discuss some of the inconsistencies with this offense that do have to do with what we've seen from Jason Bean this week. And I'm going to preface all of this because I know there's a lot of people frustrated with Jason Bean right now. Jason Bean won you a football game last week. He played outstanding. And if Jason Bean got a full sample size, he would have won you a few football games. I don't think KU's bowl eligible yet if Jason Bean's the quarterback for the entirety of the season. But I do think that they've won some football games. I think what you saw today, and we talk about cleaning little things up, if we just kind of look at the little things at the quarterback position today, they might have been enough to mask some of the issues that you had on defense, and also been enough to potentially win the football game, and enough to potentially keep the kicker off the field, to miss 2 field goals. I think about things like there's a 4th and 4. KU's in their territory. They're going for it. And Jason Bean, who delivered a great throw the first possession of the game to Jared Casey on a 4th and 1, threw a up and down ball over the shoulder of Jared Casey, who returned it for a 60-yard, or took it to the house for 60 yards. It might have been the next possession. I think it was, or maybe the two possessions after. There's a 4th and 4. And Jason Bean tries to take a corner route on a pretty well contested, play to Quentin Skinner. But if he's working through his progression, he's got Jared Casey running wide open in the middle of the field on another under route on a 4th and 4. And if it's 3rd and 4, I'm okay with Jason Bean taking that shot. But in a 4th and 4 situation, you got the under route coming uncovered. Kind of looks like they ran. I'm not going to call it a rub. But it kind of looks like they ran a little switch release almost to get him underneath the tight end on the line of scrimmage. He's sitting right there over the football. You got to make those plays if you're going to extend drives, if you're going to win football games. And that play, early play, there's plenty of other ones. That one really just stuck with me as one that kind of exemplifies, I think, a little bit of the Jason Bean experience, right?
Yeah, I think so. And, we were talking in the chat and I said, I'd have something to say about this. And the thing is basically Jason Bean is a good quarterback and an offensive coordinator that I talked to. I used to cover him. Once told me, he goes, good quarterbacks make plays. Great quarterbacks get you out of bad plays. And Jason Bean is a good quarterback. And obviously, as both of us watching the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is.
Or did you actually mean Chiefs this time? Or
no, yeah, that time I did.
No, that's good. No, you're good. You're making it up for me.
So
it's
watching Patrick Mahomes, it's obvious when the Chiefs have a play get blown up, he makes 3 guys miss, throws across his body, and he gets them out of a bad play. But sometimes, and Ken, you were a quarterback, sometimes getting somebody out of a bad play is before the play even starts. It's at the line where, you change into something different. Sometimes it's throwing the ball away to get you out of a bad play. And we saw multiple times tonight, I'm thinking of probably 3 off the top of my head, the fumble, the interception, probably the pass to Devin Neal in the backfield that kind of got bobbled and was a major loss.
Yeah.
And there was another play where Bean ran out of bounds and lost Kansas a few yards instead of throwing the ball away. In those situations, the great quarterback getting you out of the bad play, he throws the ball away. And it doesn't seem like a big deal until you have somebody who doesn't do that, right? And that's when it becomes glaring, because you say, well, 3 yards here, a possession there, a possession that led to Texas Tech getting a field goal, the sack, where he had a rusher come clean right in his face. It wasn't even a guy from behind him. Those are the things that I think where you see the difference, I feel like, between Jason Bean and Jalen Daniels, with Jalen Daniels being a great quarterback, Jason Bean being a good quarterback who can make plays, but isn't necessarily somebody who gets you out of bad plays the way that Jalen Daniels does.
Yeah, and he's so close. And I think that's kind of why, like, when me and my co-host my former co-host who shall not be named, when we were talking about the last 4 games of the season and looking at Kansas on the doorstep of a bowl game, I told him, I was like, I think there's going to be a game where Jason Bean puts it all together. He doesn't make the big back-breaking mistakes. He doesn't make do some of those little things that keep you from, winning a football game, staying competitive in a football game. And I think last week was largely that. They were beating the brakes off of him. But I think, a couple mistakes here or there, maybe it gets tighter for them, right? And he avoided those mistakes. But I think you kind of see, and I think this week was probably an example. I think, and especially I think about some of the earlier games in the year. I think you kind of see how Jalen Daniels might have separated himself a little bit, from Jason Bean in some of the competition, and why this team needs Jalen back to be the best version of themselves. Because I think Jalen Daniels hits that little crosser to Jared Casey 10 out of 10 times. And I think there's more consistency in that offense. There's less negative plays within that offense, and
more consistency in the option game for sure.
Yeah,
you have to think
for sure, and more downhill with the run, with the option game too. Like, there's just some elements to this offense that are missed without Jalen Daniels being here, and Jason Bean has done a phenomenal job. Like Kansas fans should be, you're lucky to have Jason Bean in a Jayhawk uniform. You really are. A lot of teams are jealous of Jason Bean. And there's a chance that Jason Bean goes starts somewhere next year in the transfer portal. I don't know his situation, but I wouldn't be stunned if a team gives him an opportunity to go start somewhere, and I could see him having plenty of success somewhere. But these are the things that make it a little, a team without a big margin for error, having some of these errors occur. That's the difference between winning and losing against a team like Texas Tech.
Yeah, and I think within the DMs, friend of the show Scott Chasen,
I'm sorry, who?
Said he pointed out that the Kansas defense held Texas Tech without a touchdown for 4 straight possessions.
Mm-hmm.
Over those four possessions, Kansas lost 3-0. And it's one of those things where you look at it from, and I don't want to put all the blame on Jason Bean, because there were holding calls and there were certain things that put them behind the chains at different points. But the point is just that I think we have a tendency when we watch football, we focus especially on what happens at the end of a game and not necessarily how we got there. And I think that was a big part of it. Kansas had a chance in those 4 possessions to make a serious dent. Instead, you lose, that time period 3-0 where you had a chance to maybe go up 14-3 over that period or whatever else. It changes the whole complexion of the game.
No doubt. And I think that's kind of, we've seen this team get behind and we've seen this team claw back and kind of start dominating football games.
Sure.
Or, really taking, being very in control of some games at times too, like West Virginia and primarily Houston. They got down 14-0 to both of those teams.
Yep.
And you saw them, just claw their way back, continue to stay consistent and do what they do, and limit mistakes. And there's a lot of people that share a lot of mistakes. We've talked a little bit about rush lane discipline. We've talked a little bit about Jason Bean, but here's one that I found very interesting from Michael Swain, who we do obviously claim as opposed to a former co-host of the show. Michael Swain, follow him on at mswain247 on Twitter. Kansas football committed 10 penalties tonight, the most of any game under Lance Leipold, and it's not even close. KU has committed 7 on multiple occasions. The Jayhawks haven't committed 10 penalties in a game since September of 2020. That just speaks to all the little things that just started piling up for this football team, both sides of the ball.
Yep.
Yeah. So like that just, it's frustrating. But I don't know if have I said this? Have I said this on air, or I don't know if I have, but nothing about Texas Tech screamed that they're just the better football team. I'm not just overwhelmingly impressed with Texas Tech as a team. I think that game gets played 10 times. KU might even win 6. But KU was just so if Jalen Daniels plays, it's more. I think it's 70-30. I think KU just did so many uncharacteristic things that we don't see them do very often. And it just mounted and it mounted. Special teams, we can talk about it real quick, Kevin. I had this anxiety, and again, not trying to dunk on college kids at all, but I had this like anxiety as a Kansas fan, and I think I talked to Scott about. I'm sorry, someone I won't mention on this show. I just had this like sinking fear, anxiety of like KU being on the precipice of a bowl game, and their special teams coming back to bite him in the kicking game. Like just a fear and a worry of like, okay, that, missing some field goals costs them one of that, that game that gets them from 5 to 6. And I'm very grateful and I'm very glad that KU was able to get to 6 wins without needing a game-winning field goal. And this isn't to say I have zero confidence in Jake Borchilla, but 2 misses today. His sample size over his career, I think he's made 59% of his kicks in his career. He's hit 58% this season. You're a little grateful, I think, as a KU fan that it hasn't relied on the leg of Jacob Borchilla too much this year.
Yeah, I think so. And it's I think one of the funny things is, you get on the message boards, you get a lot of comments about, well, if you know so much, you'd be on the staff, or, things like that. One thing that you hear almost unanimously, though, Kent, from college coaches is they do not know how to evaluate special teams players. and I'm not kidding about that.
I think
it's something, you have different recruiting sites, for kickers and punters. There will be a 5-star kicker, not on 24/7 Sports, because we rank them according to NFL draft potential. So you're not going to have a kicker getting a 5-star rating, on ours. But there are actual people like Chris Seiler is one who ranks the kickers in any given class. And they look at a lot of things like projectability and, lift on kicks and all these different things. Most coaches, even coaches who are special teams coordinators at the college level, struggle to evaluate those guys. And I think it's maybe a big misunderstanding that's out there, that people think like, oh, Kansas went out there and decided that Jacob Borchilla was the very best that they could get or whatever else. And again, this isn't a rip on Borchilla at all. It's just, I think it's an imperfect process, when you're going out there and you're looking at certain guys. I know Mill Valley, for instance, had a kicker a few years ago who's kicking at K-State now, and Cole Tennant, and he was a tremendous high school kicker. And he had some struggles earlier this year, and I think he's rebounded. I haven't followed every week, but it's one of those things where I think you look at it and it's very easy to say, oh, well, this guy made 7 of 8 kicks in high school. He looks like he's pretty good. And in reality, you just don't have the sample size, the ability to see these guys kick in pressure situations against Division I athletes, all these different things. And so it is really tough to evaluate it. And so I know a common comment, and I realize I've talked for a lot here, but would probably be, we'll go out in recruiting and land a new kicker. And I just think a lot of the times that's easier said than done. And there aren't necessarily, Lou Groza award guys in the transfer portal either.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably got to be a little bit of a risky proposition for a decent kicker in college football to enter the portal.
Sure.
Like, I feel like that's kind of a little bit scary, I would imagine. Like, I could see that being a little bit like dicey, because like, maybe not every team's looking for one, and maybe that kind of reduces your pool a little bit, because these are all guys that are all teams that maybe have a kicker. Like, there's a lot of factors that would probably terrify me if I was a kicker in the portal. So, it's a good point. It's got to be a little bit tricky to find somebody that is just a clear runaway, upgrade. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're watching, leave a comment, tell us how you're feeling after this game. It was kind of a tough one. There's some people that are going through it here a little bit. Let's get some positivity on the way out. We're gonna get out of here pretty quick here. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on the way out. We're gonna leave some positive thoughts, because I'll let you go. I'll let you go first, Kevin, because I do have some positive. Or anything you positive you want to say about this game?
Yeah, I think so. I think that you do look at the way the defense responded as a humongous positive, especially since earlier this year, and I know, Kent, you and I talked about this, Kansas is not equipped to deal with tempo at this point. When you look at the lack of depth, when you look at all the different things that factor into how you defend a team with tempo, that's kind of playing into Kansas's weak spot at this point. And for the Kansas defense to respond and play the way that it did after the rough start, I thought was a tremendous positive. And I thought the other thing was, this is a game, like you said, that Kansas could have won. Kansas probably played its D game. When you look at the turnovers, when you look at when you look at the turnovers, when you look at the penalties and all the different things, this was probably Kansas's D game, maybe a D plus game in terms of, how not clean it was, etc. And Kansas was right there in the fourth quarter, with a chance to come out with a road win against a Big 12 team. And I don't know for how many years we've looked at this and said that Kansas winning up until this point has been opponent reliant, right?
Mm-hmm.
You needed the other team to basically overlook Kansas, and that was Kansas's only chance to win. And here you have Kansas, even when it's not necessarily playing especially well, going on the road, having a chance to win at the end with how poorly it played. I think those are positives. They're showing growth in the program, all those things. What are you looking at from a positive side at this point, Ken?
A couple things. Devin Neal, 24 carries, 190 yards. Is that good?
Well, after having the game last week too.
Yeah, no, he's been insane, and I think he's getting better as the season's going along.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's been some moments where it's just been blocked up really well, but like I think Devin Neal has been creating a lot of yards lately, and I think that's why it's gone from like really good to great the last couple weeks. He's been outstanding. So there's that. David Reed says broadcasters are saying they expect Jalen Daniels back for Texas. That would be very interesting. Here's a tinfoil. There's two things. Kansas is going bowling.
Yep.
Kansas is like, you care about Kansas football and it's almost Thanksgiving. You're listening to this and you care about Kansas football and it's almost Thanksgiving. That's a high note to end on too. Cause like, that's exciting. Like that's like, come on. Like
there are going to be people sitting around their Thanksgiving dinner tables, Kent, talking Kansas football.
Yeah. They'll be talking about the Guaranteed Rate Bowl or whatever. Hopefully not the Liberty Bowl. I'll take whatever. I'm not gonna get too picky. Somewhere warm would be fun. But yeah, I mean the fact that you care about this football game matters, and so it sucks that this team lost again. But they're bowl eligible. They got 2 more games to try to continue to grow and build this program. 2 chances at more signature wins. Texas coming to town next week. K-State the week after that. They got a couple chances at some big wins to continue to build on this program. I think you'll be surprised about the football, about what you see KU do against Texas next week. I think you're going to be surprised. I don't know if I'm picking a win. We'll see, and we'll talk on Tuesday about that. But I think there's reason to be optimistic about what's going to happen the rest of the year. And you're already playing with house money because you've gotten over a really, really big glass ceiling. You've gotten through that one and gotten to a bowl game. So a lot of positivity still from me. This one sucks, but it feels good to hurt again. Kevin, man, I appreciate you.
Inside.
It's normally like, they normally don't make it till late night, and they definitely have this year. Kevin, thanks for coming and hanging out with me tonight, buddy.
Of course.
We're gonna go hang out with our wives now. This has been Booth Review. Thank y'all so much. We'll catch you later.